For millennia, the galaxy had been a theater of conflict, evolution, and occasional harmony, its stars burning like forgotten memories in the vast expanse. Across the stars, civilizations rose and fell, planets teemed with life, and wars consumed entire worlds. But in the shadows of every empire, every war, every revolution, there was something more. Something unseen. A hidden force manipulating the strings of fate. A race of ancient beings known only as the puppeteers. The puppeteers were gods, not in the sense that most beings understood gods, but rather in their manipulation of the very fabric of reality. Their origins were as mysterious as their motivations, their existence hidden even from the most advanced civilizations. Few knew the full extent of their influence. Few even suspected that the galaxy, in all its grand tumult, was merely a stage for a game of cosmic proportions. At the heart of their game was one species, humanity. From the earliest days of human civilization, the puppeteers had been pulling the strings. They watched as primitive tribes rose from the dust of Earth's past, steering them away from war and extinction, and later guiding them through the rise of great empires. The puppeteers watched from the fringes, carefully choosing when and how to intervene. Wars, plagues, revolutions, these were their tools. Each was an experiment, a test of humanity's adaptability. Every major event in human history was not merely the result of chance or the actions of men but the design of beings far more powerful, manipulating the flow of time and space itself. Humanity, unknowingly, had been an experiment for thousands of years. But as the years passed, the puppeteers' experiment had evolved. Their subjects, the humans, had become more difficult to control, more unpredictable. They had grown curious, too intelligent for their own good, questioning the very nature of their existence. It began with whispers, first among the scientists and scholars who stumbled upon anomalous data, patterns in the stars that didn't quite align, historical inconsistencies that shouldn't exist. Then, among the leaders and military strategists, who saw strange coincidences in the timing of wars, the sudden appearance of new technologies, the strange synchronicity of disasters. And finally, among a group of unlikely rebels, individuals whose lives had been irrevocably altered by the puppeteers' machinations. These rebels were a ragtag group of soldiers, scientists, and hackers, united by a single truth. They had glimpsed the truth. The puppeteers were real, and their experiment was far larger than anyone had imagined. One of these rebels was a former military officer named Kira Solis. She had once served in the Galactic Coalition Army, an elite force that patrolled the borders of human space. She had seen the most brutal wars, witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations, and experienced firsthand the cruelty of the puppeteers' manipulations. It started with the Gorath War, a conflict that had ravaged her homeworld. The war had been brutal, and its aftermath left Kira broken, both physically and emotionally. But as she dug into the causes of the war, she uncovered something strange. The Gorath Empire, their ancient enemies, had been pushed into conflict by forces far beyond their control. Through her investigations, Kira had uncovered a trail of hidden information, government records, secret data files, and encrypted communications that led her to one chilling conclusion. The puppeteers had orchestrated the entire war. They had placed the Gorath Empire and humanity on a collision course, pulling the strings from the shadows. Kira wasn't the only one to stumble upon this truth. She was joined by a brilliant scientist, Dr. Felix Argand, whose research into quantum physics had uncovered anomalies in the fabric of space-time, tiny ripples in reality itself, as though someone, or something, was manipulating the very laws of nature. Felix had once been a respected physicist, but after his findings had been suppressed by the coalition, he had become a fugitive, a man haunted by the knowledge that the universe was not what it seemed. Together, Kira and Felix had formed a resistance movement, a group of rebels who sought to expose the truth and liberate humanity from the puppeteers' control. They called themselves the Echelon. But the puppeteers were not blind to their efforts. From the moment Kira and Felix had begun their quest, the puppeteers had taken notice. And they had begun to take action. The puppeteers' agents, secret operatives embedded deep within the coalition's military and political structures, began to move against the echelon. As the rebels grew bolder, so too did the puppeteers' response, deploying more deadly weapons, orchestrating more wars, and triggering catastrophic events to quash any attempt at revealing the truth. Kira, Felix, and the rest of the echelon knew that they were not merely fighting a corrupt government. They were fighting a force far more powerful, an ancient race whose motives remained shrouded in mystery, whose true intentions remained hidden beneath layers of manipulation. But what was the puppeteers' ultimate goal? Were they simply conducting an experiment to see how humanity would evolve under duress, or was there something far more insidious at play? As the echelon delved deeper into the conspiracy, they discovered a horrifying possibility. Humanity was not just a pawn in the puppeteers' game. They might be the key to something far greater, something that could reshape the fate of the entire galaxy. And so, as the stars burned above them and the galaxy teetered on the edge of destruction, Kira and her team set out on a dangerous journey to uncover the full extent of the puppeteers' plan. But the path ahead was treacherous, filled with enemies both known and unknown. And with every step they took, they would come closer to the answer to a question that had haunted them all. Were they a cosmic experiment, or was humanity destined to decide the fate of the galaxy itself? The puppeteers watched from the shadows, waiting, always waiting, playing their game. And Kira Solis, along with her ragtag team of rebels, had just moved one step closer to uncovering the truth. The journey to uncover the truth about the puppeteers had only just begun, but already the echelon were feeling the weight of their mission. Every moment was a test of their resolve, their beliefs, and their very survival. The puppeteers were not simply watching from the shadows. They were actively trying to extinguish any flame of rebellion. The deeper the echelon delved into their investigation, the more dangerous their lives became. Kira Solis stood at the helm of their flagship, the Vanguard, gazing out into the endless void of space. The stars, so familiar yet so distant, seemed to mock her, twinkling like the secrets she could not yet grasp. Her crew was scattered throughout the ship, each member focused on their task, but she could sense the unease in the air. Everyone knew that their time was running out. The puppeteers were everywhere. They could be anyone, anywhere. "We need answers," Kira muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Felix Argan approached her, his normally calm demeanor edged with exhaustion. He was a man who had dedicated his life to the pursuit of knowledge, and yet, in this moment, even his brilliant mind seemed overwhelmed by the scope of what they were facing. He looked over Kira's shoulder at the stars. "You're right," Felix said. "But the deeper we go, the more we risk. The puppeteers are masters of manipulation. They've been doing this for eons. The universe itself might be designed for their experiments." Kira turned, locking eyes with him. "That's why we have to find out what they want with humanity. We need to know why we've been their subjects for so long. What is the final purpose of all this?" Felix sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "The question is, what are we to them? Are we merely pieces on a board, or is there something more? If we don't find the answers soon, the entire galaxy might fall to their machinations." The situation was dire. The puppeteers had orchestrated countless events, wars, plagues, revolutions, that seemed to follow an almost predictable pattern. Humanity had faced unimaginable horrors, only to emerge stronger each time. The puppeteers were shaping them, molding them into something. But into what? Kira clenched her fists. "I won't let them control us anymore. We're not their pawns." Felix nodded. "I agree. But there's something we need to understand first. To truly understand the puppeteers, we need to understand where they came from, and how they've done this for so long. We need to find out what happened to the ancient civilizations," Kira said suddenly, her mind racing. "The ones that came before us. The ones that were consumed by war or disappeared without a trace. There has to be a reason they were wiped out. It's all part of the puppeteers' plan." Felix's eyes brightened. "You're right. The older civilizations. the ones lost to time. If we trace their histories, we might find clues about the puppeteers' influence. There must be remnants of their work hidden on ancient worlds. Let's start with the Vraxian system, Kira decided, looking at the star map. It's rumored to have been home to one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, before it collapsed in on itself. Some say they were wiped out by an unknown plague. Others say they simply vanished. Felix raised an eyebrow. The Vraxians. Their tech was centuries ahead of us before their fall. If they were manipulated by the puppeteers, that could be a key. Kira turned to the rest of the crew, her voice firm. Prepare for hyperspace jump. We're heading to the Vraxian system. The Vanguard plunged into hyperspace, the ship vibrating with the hum of its engines. As the crew settled into their stations, Kira found herself lost in thought. The Vraxian system. If the puppeteers had shaped the rise and fall of entire species, the Vraxians were likely one of their earlier experiments. They had once been a proud race, masters of bioengineering and quantum mechanics. And then, in the span of a few centuries, they had been consumed by disease, and their civilization had crumbled. What had happened to them? And had the puppeteers played a role in their destruction? The jump felt like an eternity. When they finally exited hyperspace, the dark remnants of the Vraxian system loomed before them. What had once been a flourishing star system was now little more than a graveyard. The star itself had dimmed, and the planets, once teeming with life, were barren, scarred by the passage of time and the silent ravages of whatever had destroyed the Vraxians. We've arrived. Felix's voice broke through Kira's thoughts. Sensors are showing anomalies on Vraxia too. A signal. Ancient, but still intact. Let's go, Kira ordered, her eyes narrowing. Prepare a team. We're going down there. The landing was tense. The planet was a desolate wasteland, its surface scarred by craters and deep fissures. The air was thin, almost toxic, a reminder of the devastation that had taken place here long ago. Kira and Felix led the team through the ruins of a once great city, its towering structures now nothing but skeletons of stone and metal. They navigated through ancient streets, the silence oppressive, broken only by the hum of their equipment. It wasn't until they reached the central archive of the city, deep beneath the surface, that they uncovered what they had been searching for. In a hidden vault, a series of ancient data cores still functioned, though they were damaged, corrupted by centuries of neglect. Felix's hands flew over the interface, his fingers dancing across the screens as he worked to decrypt the data. After what felt like an eternity, the system flickered to life. A hologram flickered into existence before them. A Vraxian, its features serene but troubled. It spoke in a language Kira did not understand, but Felix translated, his voice low and full of awe. We were chosen. The Vraxian recorded message began. The puppeteers came to us, offering power beyond our comprehension. They promised us the stars. They promised us life eternal. But their gift came at a cost. We were the first to be tested. Our civilization was but a tool in their grand design. We were meant to fail. The message cut out, and the screen flickered before stabilizing again. But in our failure, we discovered something. A secret buried deep within the fabric of space itself. The puppeteers are not just manipulating us. They are testing us, testing all life. We are not the only species they've shaped. We are one experiment among many. And the final test is yet to come. Kira felt her blood run cold as the implications of the message settled over her. The puppeteers were not just manipulating humanity. They had done the same to countless others. The galaxy itself was a vast web of experiments, each species, each civilization, being shaped and tested for a final purpose. Felix looked up at Kira, his expression grim. This changes everything. The puppeteers are playing a game, one with no winners, only pieces to be sacrificed. Kira's jaw clenched, her fists tightening around the edge of the console. No, not anymore. We will be the ones to decide the outcome. As the echoes of the past reverberated through the crumbling halls of the Vraxian city, the Echelon realized the full scope of their task. The puppeteers had designed their experiments for millennia, but they had never anticipated humanity's resistance. Kira and her team were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting to reclaim their destiny. The fate of the galaxy was in their hands. The truth about the puppeteers was darker than anything Kira and Felix could have imagined. Their discovery on Vraxia 2 was only the beginning, a glimpse into a web of manipulation that stretched across the entire galaxy. The Vraxian message had been clear: humanity was not unique in its suffering. Every race, every civilization the puppeteers had touched was part of a vast, cruel experiment. Kira paced the deck of the Vanguard, her mind racing. The more they uncovered, the more questions arose. What did the puppeteers want? Why had they spared some species while obliterating others? And what was the final test that the Vraxians had warned them about? The truth was out there, buried beneath the ruins of countless forgotten worlds, hidden in the lies of their greatest institutions. Felix sat hunched over a datapad in the corner of the room, his eyes scanning the decrypted Vraxian archives. Despite the chilling revelations, there was a flicker of excitement in his voice when he spoke. Kira, I think I found something. This data, it's like a blueprint, a map of their experiment. Kira walked over to him, her curiosity piqued. Felix zoomed in on a series of symbols, alien characters that didn't match anything in known Vraxian script or any other language they had encountered. The map outlined the galaxy in a way that didn't make sense at first glance. But as Felix manipulated the data, patterns began to emerge. These coordinates, Felix muttered, almost to himself. They're not just locations. They're connected to major events, wars, disasters. The puppeteers have been orchestrating everything from a central point. Kira leaned over the screen, scrutinizing the information. So this is it. The heart of the puppeteers' influence. Where it all began. Felix nodded. I believe so. If we can decode the rest of this map, we might find where they operate from. The source of their power, the core of their experiment. Kira stood still for a moment, the weight of the revelation sinking in. And if we find that, we can stop them. We can end this experiment. A chill ran down her spine at the thought. The puppeteers had toyed with the fate of entire civilizations for thousands of years, but now, for the first time, the Echelon had a real chance to strike back. The galaxy was a chessboard, and the puppeteers had long been the unseen hands guiding the pieces. But no longer. They had underestimated humanity. Felix looked up, meeting her gaze. We'll need to go deeper. This map is just a start. There's more we don't understand, things we can't even begin to comprehend. Kira nodded, resolute. Then we go deeper. We have no choice. The Vanguard set course for the coordinates Felix had uncovered. The journey took them to the fringes of known space, beyond the reaches of the great galactic empires and their controlled borders. Here, in the cold, uncharted void, the Echelon hoped to find the key to unraveling the puppeteers' mysteries. As they neared the location, the stars grew strangely dim, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. The ship's sensors began to glitch, picking up anomalous readings, disturbances in the fabric of space, like ripples in a pond. But this was no natural phenomenon. We're close, Felix said, eyes wide with both fear and anticipation. This, whatever it is, it's warping the very space around us. Kira stepped up to the command console. Brace for anything. We don't know what we're about to face. The Vanguard emerged from the edge of hyperspace into a haunting scene, an empty sector, where space itself seemed twisted. The stars were blurred, stretched out of alignment, and the space ahead was occupied by a massive, ancient structure that seemed to hum with dark energy. What is that? One of the crew members asked, voice trembling. Felix stared at the structure, his face pale. It's not a station. It's something else. I think it's alive. A construct built to anchor the puppeteer's power. Kira's heart raced. A weapon? A control center? No, Felix said slowly, his voice filled with awe. This is something far older. Something far more dangerous. It's a conduit, a gateway, a bridge between dimensions. The echelon's entry into this part of space had triggered something, awakening whatever lay dormant within the ancient structure. As the vanguard moved closer, strange energy pulses emanated from the structure, the space around them distorting with every passing second. Suddenly, the ship's systems went haywire. Lights flickered, and alarms blared as the sensors went berserk. The vanguard was being pulled toward the structure, like a moth to a flame. "Cut the engines," Kira ordered. "Get us out of here." But it was too late. The ship's hull groaned as the gravitational pull of the structure increased, warping the very space around them. They were locked in. Then, a voice broke through the chaos. It wasn't coming from their comm systems. It was something more, primal. "Welcome to the heart." Kira felt her blood run cold. The voice was unmistakable. It was the puppeteers. Before they could react, a shimmering portal opened within the structure, its edges pulsing with eerie light. Through it, they could see a vast, unnatural landscape, an alien world that defied all logic and reason. It was like a dream, a vision of another reality. And at the center of this world, there stood a figure, tall and impossibly ancient, radiating power. The puppeteers, their true form revealed, were not the beings they had imagined. No longer cloaked in shadow, they were beyond human comprehension, their bodies shifting between states of energy and matter, flickering in and out of existence. "Who are you?" Kira asked, her voice shaking despite her resolve. The figure before them smiled, though it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was the smile of something ancient, something that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "We are the architects, the creators of this universe, the stewards of its fate. And you are our final test." The portal shimmered again, and Kira realized the truth. This was no accidental encounter. They had walked straight into the heart of the puppeteer's domain. The final test was about to begin. The voice of the puppeteer echoed through the chamber, its words weaving through Kira's mind like a strange melody. The reality around them was shifting, warping with each passing second. The immense structure that had drawn them here was alive, its surface flickering with strange symbols and patterns that Kira could barely comprehend. It felt as though space itself had been peeled back, revealing something far beyond the physical realm, a space where time and matter bent to an unknowable will. Kira stood frozen, her mind racing. Her team stood beside her, equally overwhelmed. Felix, pale and wide-eyed, clutched his datapad, trying to analyze the fluctuating signals around them. The rest of the crew stood tense, weapons drawn but uncertain of what they were facing. The puppeteer, or rather, the entity in front of them, stepped forward. It was both everything and nothing, a shifting silhouette of energy and thought. Its form was constantly in flux, as though it existed in multiple states simultaneously, its essence intertwined with the very fabric of the galaxy. "We are the architects," the puppeteer said again, its voice calm, yet suffused with a power that made Kira's bones ache. "For millennia, we have guided the threads of evolution, watched as species struggled, grew, and perished. And now, we have come to the final chapter of your species' story." Kira's mind flashed to the message from the Vraxians, their warning about the final test. Her heart raced, but she held her ground, stepping forward. "What do you want with humanity?" she demanded. "Why have you manipulated us, made us your pawns in this game?" The puppeteer's form flickered, then solidified slightly. "You are more than pawns, Kira Solis. You are the ultimate test, the culmination of an experiment that spans the cosmos. Each civilization we have shaped, each race we have manipulated, has faced challenges, wars, plagues, and revolutions. But you, humanity, you are different. You have the potential to change everything." Felix stepped forward, his voice trembling but curious. "What do you mean, the ultimate test? What's the purpose of all of this? Why have we been tested in every way possible?" The puppeteer's gaze seemed to focus on Felix, and the atmosphere shifted, like gravity had suddenly increased. "Your species, you were always meant for greatness. We chose you for this test because you are the wild card in our calculations. Unlike the others, you resist. You adapt. You evolve. And we have watched you grow, your wars, your discoveries, your betrayals, and your resilience. Everything has been designed to shape you, to mold you into something new. But the question remains, will you rise to the challenge, or will you fall like those before you? Kira's fists clenched. You've caused suffering across the galaxy, ruined countless civilizations, all in the name of some experiment. That's not a test, that's cruelty. The puppeteer's form rippled, like a wave of energy. You misunderstand. It is not cruelty, but necessity. The universe is a place of chaos and entropy. Civilizations are born, and they fall. Some are extinguished by their own hands, others by forces beyond their control. But we have shaped you, humanity, to stand at the crossroads of the universe's future. What you decide will determine the fate of all living things. Kira took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. She understood now. The puppeteers weren't merely testing humanity. They were testing something greater. They were watching to see if humanity had the potential to rise above their manipulations, to prove themselves capable of surviving on their own terms. But Kira wasn't ready to let them win. If you think we'll just play along, you're wrong. We're done being your experiment. The puppeteer's form flickered again, as if considering her words. Then, with a sudden burst of power, the space around them warped, and they were no longer standing in the heart of the puppeteer's lair. Kira's surroundings shifted, and the ground beneath her feet gave way. They had been thrust into a new reality. A vast, desolate landscape stretched out before her. In the distance, storm clouds raged, lightning flashing across the sky. The wind howled, and the air tasted bitter. It felt like the edge of existence itself. This is the test, the puppeteer's voice echoed. Here, you will face the challenges that will define your species. It is not enough to resist. You must survive. You must prove you can adapt, evolve, and overcome the darkest of trials. Only then will we know if you are worthy of standing alongside the greatest civilizations that have come before you. Kira's heart pounded. What is this place? What do you want us to do? You will see, the puppeteer said. The trial begins now. Suddenly, the ground shook. From the depths of the earth, monstrous shapes began to rise, beasts unlike anything Kira had ever seen. They were titanic creatures, massive and hulking, with jagged scales and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly fire. They roared, their sounds reverberating across the landscape, shaking the very air around them. These creatures are a part of the trial, the puppeteer continued, its voice omnipresent. They are a challenge, a force of nature designed to test your species' resilience. Defeat them, and you prove that humanity can overcome even the most impossible odds. The creatures charged, their footsteps shaking the ground beneath them, their breath hot and putrid. Kira instinctively reached for her sidearm, but the weapon seemed inadequate against such monstrous foes. The rest of the crew quickly prepared, drawing weapons and readying themselves, but everyone knew, this wasn't just a fight for survival. This was the puppeteer's ultimate challenge, the trial they had been preparing for. Stay together, Kira shouted, rallying her team. We fight back, we adapt, we survive. The first beast charged toward them, its massive jaws snapping. Kira dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack, but the creature's massive tail swept through the air, sending one of the crew members flying. Felix rushed to their side, pulling the injured crew member to safety, but the beast was relentless. This is it, Kira whispered, her breath coming in short gasps. The final test. As the battle raged on, Kira realized the truth of what the puppeteers had said. This was no simple fight. The monsters were not just creatures. They were the embodiment of every obstacle, every trial humanity had faced throughout its existence. War, famine, plague, betrayal, all of it, distilled into these terrible creatures. But Kira refused to let the puppeteers win. Humanity had faced the impossible before and survived. This would not be the end. Fight, Kira yelled. We survive. We adapt. The battle was only just beginning. But the outcome of this trial would determine not just humanity's future, but the fate of the entire galaxy. The battle was chaotic. an eruption of violent motion, deafening roars, and flashes of energy. The creatures, enormous and terrifying, were relentless, their every attack designed to overwhelm the team. Their jaws, dripping with venomous saliva, snapped inches from Kira's face, while their massive claws raked through the air like deadly scythes. The Vanguard crew, trained for combat, fought back with everything they had, but even their weapons seemed minuscule in comparison to the beast's size and strength. "Keep moving," Kira shouted, as one of the creatures lunged toward her. She ducked just in time, her heart pounding in her chest. She rolled to the side, pulling out a plasma rifle and firing at the beast's exposed underbelly. The shot hit, and the creature howled in pain, stumbling backward, but it didn't fall. Felix was nearby, tending to an injured crew member. The beast had knocked them down, and Felix was applying a quick bandage, his hands shaking. He glanced up at Kira, his eyes wide. These creatures, they're more than just physical threats. It's like they're feeding on our fear. Kira turned her gaze toward the creatures, noticing for the first time the faint shimmer around them. It was a strange energy field, like a distortion in reality itself, amplifying their terror. The creatures weren't just testing their physical abilities. They were manipulating their emotions, pushing them to the brink of despair. "Stay focused," Kira shouted, pulling Felix to his feet. "Fear is part of the trial. It's what they want, what the puppeteers want. Don't give in to it." But just as she spoke, another creature appeared, leaping out of the shadows with terrifying speed. Its maw opened wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. It slammed into the ground between them, causing the earth to tremble. Kira barely managed to roll out of the way in time, her pulse racing. The creature swung its clawed limbs down at them, but this time, Kira was ready. She fired again, but the blast barely made a dent in the creature's thick armor. "We need a plan," she yelled. "We can't keep fighting like this." Felix's eyes were darting around, his mind racing. He noticed something. The energy field around the beasts was unstable. "Kira," he shouted, "look for their weak points. The energy shields. They're like a shield generator. If we can overload them, we can defeat the creatures." Kira's heart skipped a beat. "How?" Felix pointed to a cluster of strange energy nodes on the back of the creature that had just attacked. "There. It's vulnerable there. If we hit it with enough energy, we might be able to overload its shield and bring it down." Without hesitation, Kira sprang into action, rallying the crew. "Everyone, focus on the nodes. We hit them together, no hesitation." The team worked quickly, gathering their weapons and positioning themselves around the creature. Kira gave the signal, and in unison, they fired. A series of intense blasts tore through the air, slamming into the creature's weak points. The energy shield flickered and flared before cracking under the assault, and the creature let out a final, agonized screech before collapsing to the ground in a heap of dark energy. One down, but more were coming. Felix wiped his brow, adrenaline coursing through him. "It's working," he said, breathless. "But we have to keep going. There's more, and the energy field's getting stronger. We need to finish this before." Before he could finish, the sky above them darkened, and a rumbling voice filled the air. "Impressive, humans. You have survived the first challenge, but there are many more to come." Kira clenched her fists. "We're not done yet," she muttered, but there was something in the puppeteer's tone that unsettled her. The challenge was far from over. The ground suddenly split open, and from the fissure emerged more of the monstrous creatures, each more terrifying than the last. But there was something different about these new beasts. They were faster, more intelligent, and their energy fields had evolved. The puppeteers were adapting the trial to force them into deeper despair. "We need to end this, now," Kira shouted, her voice rising above the growing chaos. She turned to Felix. "Can you override the energy fields? Find a way to stop them from evolving?" Felix nodded, his eyes determined. "I can try, but I'll need time. The energy fields are tied to a central source somewhere on this planet. If we can get close enough to the source, I can disable it." "Then that's our goal," Kira said, her eyes locking onto the swarm of creatures. "We'll fight our way to the source. Everyone, keep moving. Protect Felix." The crew rushed forward, pushing through the waves of attacking monsters. The creatures were relentless, but now, with a plan in place, they fought with newfound determination. Every shot, every strike, was a step closer to their goal. The beasts were no longer just mindless obstacles. They were the embodiments of the puppeteer's cruelty. And Kira, along with the crew, was done being controlled. As they advanced, Felix stayed behind them, his fingers flying over his datapad, desperately trying to crack the code that held the creature's power together. Kira could see the strain in his face, the concentration he was putting into his work. They didn't have much time. "Hold the line," Kira shouted as a massive beast, covered in dark, spiked armor, charged at them. The ground shook with its steps, but the crew pushed forward, cutting through its energy shields and striking at its weak points. It roared in pain but kept fighting back, its massive limbs smashing the ground as it tried to crush them. Felix's voice crackled over the comms. "I've got the coordinates. It's a central energy relay. It's not far from here." Kira's eyes locked onto the distant mountain range, where the energy pulse seemed to be coming from. "Let's go." With renewed strength, they rushed toward the relay, cutting through the remaining creatures in their path. The beasts were relentless, but the crew was more focused now than ever. Every shot, every movement was precise. When they reached the relay, Felix worked quickly to access the central control panel. "This is it," he said, his voice tinged with relief. "I just need to overload the core." But as he began the process, a massive, final beast, larger than any they had faced, emerged from the shadows. It was the size of a building, with multiple heads and limbs, each one covered in jagged, dark armor that pulsed with dark energy. It was the puppeteer's final challenge. "We can't stop now," Kira said through gritted teeth, facing the monstrous beast. "Hold the line. Felix, finish the overload. We need this to end." With one final push, the crew held their ground, fighting the last of the creatures with all their strength. Felix's fingers hovered over the control panel, ready to bring down the puppeteer's final trial. The fate of humanity, and the galaxy, rested on this final moment. The massive, multi-headed creature loomed over them, each head snapping and growling, its spiked body radiating a menacing aura of raw power. It was an abomination, not just a test of strength, but a manifestation of the puppeteer's dark will. As the ground beneath Kira's feet trembled, she could feel the weight of the trial pressing down on her. Every instinct screamed to run, but they had no choice but to fight. Felix was still at the control panel, his fingers trembling as he worked to overload the energy relay. The countdown had already begun, but it was clear to Kira that if they didn't stop the creature first, there wouldn't be enough time. The creature's central head twisted toward them, its enormous maw opening to unleash a deafening roar. The sound sent a shockwave through the air, knocking Kira and her team back. The beast was more than just physical. It was a psychic weapon too, designed to break their resolve. The voices in Kira's mind whispered, the puppeteer's influence pressing down on her like a heavy weight. "You cannot win. You are mere ants to us. The trial is our gift, and your failure will be your punishment." But Kira gritted her teeth, forcing herself to block out the voices. "We're not your puppets," she muttered under her breath, then shouted to her team, "Focus. The creature's power is tied to the energy relay. If we take it down, we can end this." With a roar of defiance, Kira charged, firing her weapon at the creature's nearest head. The blast hit, but the beast barely flinched. Her crew followed suit, blasting at the creature's armored hide, trying to find some weak spot, but the creature's defenses were unlike anything they'd ever encountered. Felix's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm almost there. Just hold on for a few more seconds." The creature snarled, and with a single swipe of its claw, it sent 2 crew members flying, their bodies crashing against the jagged rocks. Kira's heart sank, but there was no time to mourn. They had to end this, now. "Fall back," Kira shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Get to cover. Felix, stay with the panel." The crew fell into a defensive position, retreating to the rocks and using whatever cover they could find. Kira's mind raced as she watched Felix, desperate to make sure he didn't get caught in the crossfire. She knew they had only one shot at this. The creature lunged again, its massive jaws snapping just inches from her. She dodged to the side, but the force of its movement sent a shockwave through the air, knocking her to the ground. For a moment, she lost her grip on the weapon, and the world around her spun. The creature's jaws hovered above her, and it seemed like time slowed as its teeth gleamed with an ominous light. But before the creature could strike, a blast of energy ripped through the air, hitting the creature squarely in the side. The force of the blast sent it staggering back, giving Kira enough time to roll out of the way. She quickly grabbed her weapon and fired again, aiming for the weak points where the creature's energy shield flickered. Felix's voice was barely audible through the static. I've done it. The core is about to overload. Get clear," Kira screamed, knowing what was coming. The creature turned toward Felix, sensing the change in the energy flow. It roared in fury and charged, but Kira had already sprinted forward, leaping into the fray and throwing herself between Felix and the beast. She wasn't sure she could hold the creature off, but she had no choice. With one final, desperate shot, Kira aimed at the core of the beast's energy shield. The blast hit with a brilliant flash of light, and the creature's shields flickered out. It screeched in agony as the energy within it collapsed, unraveling like a dying star. The massive beast staggered back, its many heads thrashing in pain. "Felix!" Kira shouted. "Do it now!" Felix didn't hesitate. His fingers slammed down on the control panel, and the overload sequence completed. A shockwave of energy rippled through the planet, and the creatures around them, along with the central energy relay, began to collapse. The ground itself seemed to tremble and crack as if the very planet was being torn apart by the puppeteer's power unraveling. The massive creature that had attacked them fell to its knees, its bodies twitching and spasming as the energy field inside it collapsed. Kira watched as the life drained from its many heads, its form disintegrating into nothingness, like dust caught in a cosmic wind. The trial had come to an end. The sky above them shifted, and the strange, otherworldly energy that had saturated the planet began to dissipate. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Kira stood panting, covered in sweat and blood, but alive. Her crew gathered around her, battered but victorious. "We did it," Felix breathed, looking at the now vanished creature. "It's over." But Kira's mind was racing. There was something else she had to understand, something that the puppeteers hadn't revealed yet. The test was over, yes, but the trial was a mere symptom of a much greater purpose. "Impressive, humans," the puppeteer's voice reverberated through the still air, its presence lingering like a shadow. "You have passed the trial. You have survived the first stage. But the experiment is not yet complete. Your survival was merely the beginning. We will see how you handle the ultimate choice." Kira's heart sank. The ultimate choice? She turned to Felix, her eyes filled with determination. "There's more to this, isn't there? This wasn't just a test. The puppeteers, they're planning something even bigger." Felix nodded, his face grim. "They've been manipulating us from the start, Kira. What we've faced so far, it's only part of a much larger game. The real question is, what comes next? Are we ready for the final phase?" Kira took a deep breath, her gaze steely. "We will be. Whatever comes next, we will face it together. The puppeteers think they can control us, but they're wrong. Humanity's not their experiment. We're the force that will end it." The fate of the galaxy rested on the decisions they would make from this point forward. The puppeteers had set the stage, but now, humanity was about to take control of its destiny. It was no longer about survival. It was about freedom. And Kira Solis would not let anyone, alien or otherwise, take that from her. The silence that followed the collapse of the puppeteer's trial felt unnatural. Kira could hear her own breath, ragged and heavy, echoing in her ears as she surveyed the wreckage around them. The creatures, the energy relay, and the unnatural storm that had once raged above them, all of it was gone. What remained was a desolate landscape, the planet's skies now clearing as if the oppressive weight of the puppeteer's presence had been lifted. But Kira knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. The puppeteer's final words still echoed in her mind, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. The ultimate choice, the voice had said. This is the true test. You may have passed our trial, but the experiment is not yet complete. Felix stood beside her, his fingers still twitching from the energy he had expended to override the relay. It's over, right? He asked, his voice low and uncertain. We won. Kira shook her head, staring at the horizon. No, it's not over. The puppeteers don't just test us. They've been manipulating every aspect of our existence. They want us to believe we've passed some final test. But that's exactly what they want, to keep us in their game. We survived the trial, Felix insisted. Doesn't that prove we're stronger than their manipulations? If we can't stop them now, what's the point of it all? Kira took a deep breath, focusing on the task ahead. The point is we can stop them, but only if we understand the full extent of what they've been doing. The trial wasn't just about strength or survival, it was about control. They've been testing us, shaping us, pushing us to see if we're worthy of something bigger. But the question is, what happens when we break free from their control? Her mind raced as she thought about the implications. The puppeteers had guided humanity's every move, every war, every political shift. They'd orchestrated history, pulling strings from the shadows, molding entire civilizations, including humanity, into the subjects of their experiment. The test of survival was just the beginning, and they were now offering them a choice, an ultimate test of the galaxy's fate. Do you understand what this means? Kira said softly, more to herself than to Felix. If they control the galaxy's fate, then we have no future. But if we reject them, if we break their chains, we will be free. We can reshape the galaxy however we see fit. Felix's face darkened. But how? They have the power to destroy us all. They've already manipulated entire civilizations into chaos and collapse. What makes you think we can do this? Kira turned to him, her gaze fierce. Because we've already done it. Every trial, every test, they wanted us to fail. They thought we would break. But we didn't. We adapted. We fought back. The puppeteers underestimated us, and that's why we're still here. But the real choice isn't just about fighting them. It's about deciding if we'll allow them to keep deciding our fate. She looked around at the rest of her team. Their faces were worn, battered, but resolute. They had come this far, defying the puppeteers' game at every turn. The galaxy doesn't belong to the puppeteers. It belongs to those who choose to fight for it. We will choose how to move forward, and we'll make sure humanity doesn't fall into another cycle of manipulation. The sky above them was clear now, the threat of the puppeteers' trial seemingly gone, but the shadow of their influence still loomed over the crew. They had learned to survive their trials, but now they had to face their greatest challenge, the choice that would define not just their future, but the future of the galaxy. Felix nodded slowly, the weight of the decision heavy on him. So, what's the plan? How do we fight back against them? We have no idea where they are, what their true power is. Kira's eyes glinted with determination. We find the heart of their power. We break their grip on the galaxy by getting to the source of their influence, the central network that spans across the stars. The puppeteers have hidden themselves for millennia, but they can't hide forever. And we're going to force them to show their hand. We could be walking into a trap, Felix cautioned. They might be watching us right now, waiting for us to make our move. They might be, Kira acknowledged. But we've already proven that we're not afraid to make the hard choice. We're not playing their game anymore. If we die trying, then we die fighting for our future. The crew stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their mission settling over them. Then, one by one, they nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening. Felix let out a long breath. All right, Let's do it. For humanity. Kira turned back to the horizon, a sense of purpose filling her chest. This wasn't just about fighting for their survival anymore, it was about fighting for freedom. The puppeteers had designed this galaxy to be their playground, a place for them to manipulate, control, and experiment. But the galaxy was more than just a test. It was a living, breathing tapestry of countless civilizations, each with the potential to shape its own destiny. And humanity, against all odds, had earned the right to make that choice. The Vanguard crew moved out, gathering their gear and preparing to face the puppeteers' true power. As they climbed aboard their ship, Kira took one last look at the planet behind them. It had once been the site of a test. Now, it was a symbol of humanity's refusal to be controlled. Ready to break the chains? Kira asked, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. Felix stood beside her, his hand resting on the ship's controls. Always. With that, the Vanguard took off into the stars, leaving behind the planet that had been the heart of the puppeteers' experiment. The crew wasn't just escaping. They were marching toward the final battle, the true test of freedom. And they would fight, with everything they had, to make sure that the galaxy would never again fall under the puppeteers' manipulation. The ultimate choice had come, and humanity would choose to take its future into its own hands.